All right. Hello, everybody. Today, this is a soul from Glasgow, but we're not going to talk about Glasgow. We're going to talk about Worlds. So, as this is going up, World Championships happened in Seattle Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And yeah, it was pretty cool. um, Annoyingly, in America, you got to stay up super late to watch it, and I really struggled to get back on track with my own training after just the sleep deprivation. I don't know, certain things, when people say they get older and you'll feel this when you get older, a lot of the times I don't see that happening, but with sleep, 100%. I miss a day of sleep now. I have bad sleep for one day. I recover for several days, and that's basically what happened with Worlds. So yeah, I don't even really know where to start with this one. I guess it's a multi-blind podcast, so we'll start with the multi-blind, and this one's going to be a bit of a downer for me because congrats to everyone who got it, but we didn't get to see it. I totally understand why. It's not a interesting event to watch. It's also difficult to get recording and all of that to be able to look at everybody's results without causing any noise and distractions and stuff. It's the reason why nobody's watching this compared to other of my videos. Multi-blind's a boring event to watch generally, but for me, it kind of feels, if there was one time where it'd be nice to get a glimpse of what's going on and actually get to see stuff happening live, even if it was just one camera set up somewhere in the room where you can kind of see everything on a separate stream, doesn't even have to be the main one. I think that could be pretty cool. One, it's cool to see it happening on like the biggest stage it can be at. I think the competitors entered in, multi and the big blinds, they deserve to get their stuff spotlighted too. And, if nobody wants to watch it, fine. But, you'll get the diehard fans. I absolutely would have just put it on and watched it. I've seen when Graham has done streams, people watch it because it's exciting to see like what's gonna happen. Can he do it? Maybe you're not paying full attention like you might be with the other events, but to be honest, that's how I watched a lot of Worlds anyway. All the events I didn't care about, just kind of had it on in the background while I was doing other stuff. So I think it would have been really cool. I would have loved to see like the difference in how everybody kind of splits it up. What kind of packets are they using? How much time are they spending on memo? How many reviews, etc. And yeah, then I just think it'd be nice to be able to spotlight the winners a bit more. Have something that kind of shows what they got, how they did it. Maybe that's just me. Let me know if you would have liked to have seen multi, if you would have liked to have seen 4 blind, 5 blind. Those two, even more of a reason to, it happens really quickly. It's not like it used to be, or like it's not like it's taking huge amounts of time. The 4 blind podium was all like a minute and a half maximum. 5 blind still pretty short, and yeah, I think they deserve to have a good amount of recognition. So that was kind of sad that they didn't get it, but totally understandable as to why. Just would be really nice if something like that could be sorted out in the future. Maybe there's an argument its presence itself is a bit distracting, and so people might not like that, but I would say you could argue the same thing about all the people showing up to spectate at Worlds. It's the same thing, really. You can just. It's just another level of pressure that you have to deal with, and I think it's justifiable that you should have to deal with. Nobody's going to Worlds expecting to see world records. That's not what it's about. When the pressure gets higher, it becomes harder to perform at your very best, and what we want to see is who's performing under that pressure better than anyone else, rather than who's breaking the records and doing everything under ideal conditions. So then I guess moving on from that, Blind, also really cool. I guess one of the other fun things about Worlds is, for me, describing speed cubing to people has always been a bit of a like, yeah, this is what I do, but you would never want to watch it. You wouldn't go to a cubing competition. I've had one or two people turn up to watch me compete, and they kind of stand there for 5 minutes and go, all right, well, I guess this is all that happens. It's just the same thing over and over again. It's not exactly the most exciting spectator sport. So I guess next is to give full credit to the, what are we going to call them, commentators in the little booth. The live stream for Worlds was amazing. Really cool to take something that really is just the same thing happening over and over again, but have it be made interesting in a way that people can keep watching for a long period of time, where even if the footage itself isn't necessarily changing very much, and I think in the modern day that's even more impressive still. So full props to them there. Hopefully that's something I'll figure out how to do with this, have people excited to watch me just stare at cubes for a long time. But they did a really good job at just keeping the energy high when you were watching just solves, maybe people you didn't know who they were, or if not somebody in the kind of top tier, being able to bring on guests and other people to kind of talk through things. That was really nice. And meaning you could still keep your eyes on the event, but you're kind of free to check in and out, and then they can spotlight when something big is coming up. And it really made speedcubing feel a lot more like a major sport. Like, I've watched all kinds of sports, especially when it gets to late night and you got nothing else to do and you want to just tune in and just see, and they got commentary for literally everything. And I think even the commentary on the World Championship was better than a lot that I usually see. The combination of being able to talk through what they're actually doing technically, as well as explaining it in layman's terms, like just keeping it interesting for everybody at every level, was really, really cool. And that's why that tangent came to me when I was thinking about Blind, is that the other thing that was really helpful was that in many stages, the action, I guess, was really intense. That Blind final, Charlie Eggins getting just like clinching the winner on the final solve, which was like I guess a lot of them seem to come down to that. Like even the 3x3 finals, the fact that it mattered right up until the final solve, and up until then, you couldn't tell what was going to happen. Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as the previous worlds, but still just made it pretty damn exciting to watch. So that was really cool. The blind I thought was insanely impressive. It's kind of got me super motivated into practicing blind instead of just multi all the time. That's something I really need at this point anyway, because my execution, I keep trying to push 30 cubes, and I think I need faster execution at this point if I want to ever see that grow. That's going to be really important. That's mostly down to just figuring out optimal algs, sorting out my cubes a bit as well. They're all a little bit loose for my liking. But yeah, it was pretty inspiring to see all that. Don't have a lot to say about a lot of the other events, like all the non-cube shaped ones. I have like a slightly passing interest, I guess, was sort of cheering on, hoping for Aiden Granger to do well in his Megaminx. Congrats also, I guess, to Ryan Eckersley for his podium on 4Blind as well. I guess, yeah, that's the other thing to say, is really cool to see a lot of people from like the UK performing really highly. There was Kieran, obviously, from Ireland, just kind of used to seeing him do really well, and always fun to watch him. I didn't get to check all the other Irish results, but was really cool to see Simon Kelly getting into the second round of blind as well. So I guess that's the other thing that made it quite watchable, was just knowing a lot more of the people, not just the people from local competitions, but then also the kind of big names as well. So Felix, I made a video recently about, using the title of GOAT, and saying, it's not really an appropriate title until somebody's kind of getting past their era of greatness. Like, once you figure they're not going to do very much. And I mentioned in the video that for Felix, it's like, yeah, okay, you could say he's probably done all his big major title wins and everything, but actually watching him, I kind of felt like, oh, maybe not. Like, maybe he's not winning so much, but he doesn't look like he's slowing down in terms of his own ability or potential or anything like that. And it was really fun to watch him, because once he kind of steps down from breaking all the world records, you don't necessarily get to see so much footage of anyone. Like, when you're just scrolling things on YouTube, you're going to see whoever's breaking world records, and if you're lucky, someone will send you some of the other stuff. So really, really fun to get to watch Felix again, and especially seeing that, he doesn't look like he's lost anything at all. He still looks just super fast, super capable in everything that I watched, especially. Same was true for like Max Park and that. Almost just a bit crazy to see him not be podium, not be getting podium in a lot of those events that he previously has been pretty much guaranteed. So yeah, that was interesting as well, I guess. But on the other hand, incredible to be watching him. And then in terms of highlight for me, 5x5 finals. Timon setting the world record time on that final solve was another moment that just insane to watch. Just really, I don't know, next level in terms of mental preparation and whatnot. And we saw a lot of that from a lot of the cubers, the Yi Hang especially, also. But yeah, to get that world record time, final solve, it doesn't even matter. He'd already won the event. He really didn't need to push himself for that. And the like ability when you have your brain telling you, hey, you know what, you could just relax here. Especially when pressure is high, like when you're faced with something really, really difficult, your brain's going to fight really, really hard not to do it, especially if that's an option. And so, I would almost say, if the win depended on that last solve and the world record was on the line, that almost would have been easier than if he had got the win, than how it happened, how he got the win on the solve before. And yeah, I don't know, there's just something about the style of it as well. Like, just putting the cube down, that like smile that came up, just, I don't know, the amount of self belief, discipline, motivation was really cool to see. And I think it was really telling when you were getting so many interviews with the younger cubers, and everyone's going like, who is your who are you looking up to right now? And almost all of them were saying Timon. I was wondering, like, maybe some of the ones in China, would they have gone for Yiheng, even though he's kind of more similar age to them, but he is just wiping the floor in terms of results and success and things. But yeah, I don't know, I can see why Timon would be such a great influence on people. Just that insane amount of determination in a different way than maybe you would have seen from Max Park or Felix. Yeah, I don't know, just that like insane amount of silence, stillness that he has before the solves. It's just so fun to watch. There's actually something that when I'm working with athletes, I haven't done this in cubing yet, but I'd really love to. So if anyone who's at the top of their game in cubing and would like to chat through cubing style with me, please get in touch. I very much doubt anyone at a super high level is actually watching this, but even at a lower level, one of the things that people often overlook is, when you want to be really good at a sport, the skill and the technique is a really huge part of that, but your own individual artistry, like your own personal flair, style, whatever you want to call it, is totally essential. And I find it's super overlooked. Like, people say, well, no, if I'm just the fastest cuber, then everybody's going to look up to me as the fastest cuber. But there are people who have broken world records that we don't even really give a second look into. A lot of the time, if an unknown cuber breaks a record in something, sometimes they just kind of get forgotten about. And one of the things that's important there is, are you memorable in any way when it comes to how you're performing? And especially when the parameters are really constricted, like you come in, you sit at a table, you solve something, it's hard to be able to add too much self-expression to that. But I find that it's a really important aspect if you want to have success travel with you well. So, your style might not necessarily get you the result, but after the result, you also need a ton of other things in order to be able to be successful for a long time. You need to be able to do this as a career, as a job. So, sponsorships are going to be important. You're going to be interacting with people all the time. So, if you've got a fan base, for example, if your interactions with people are always favorable, then they're going to remember you more fondly, and that's going to lead to more positive experiences when you go to your competitions. If everybody specifically wants to say hi to you, if everybody wants to share whatever good news or good information they've got with you, you're going to benefit more than if everybody finds that you're kind of rude and standoffish and whatnot. And all of that is down to like your own personal style and how you carry yourself in competition. The analogy I use for people is, if you had Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, two of the best footballers of all time, and you silhouetted them out so you couldn't see who it was, maybe even cut off all the hair and stuff like that. So it's very hard to determine from any kind of physical features who it is. Could you still tell who they are from their style of play? Could you tell who they are then from their fashion? So, like David Beckham was a footballer who kind of, his whole image and brand was about how he looked and that kind of thing. Or is it about your personality? So I think you kind of see different versions of people's style shine through in speed cubing, but I'm not sure anyone's really honed in on it, like tried to actually think about what do I want this to look like and how do I work on my artistic expression. With Felix, everybody just seems to love him. He's so super chilled out and friendly when he's on any kind of interview or anything like that. And again, because of his results, then people really gravitate towards him. I think the fact that when you see in a lot of those finals, he's dropping low down in the ranks, but everybody's still rooting for him because they want him specifically to get through. There's other people who have got maybe not the consistently high level of results, but if they didn't get through, you would kind of just shrug it off and be like, okay, well, guess not good enough this time. And I think that is testament to how he carries himself. Timon and Max and Yiheng don't really have that same what's the best word for that, charisma, I guess, when it comes to how they brand themselves. Max seems to have maybe some help in terms of I remember he always had those like catchphrases that came out, the "don't think, just solve," and I'm sure other people were helping throw some of that into the mix, but he seems to have built up a bit more of a commercial kind of vibe. He fits very well with the Rubik's brand, and again, the results are super important. The skill level is really important to be able to justify that and make it credible, but what you do with it also matters. With Timon, I think it's almost like the punk rock era. Like, you kind of feel like he doesn't really care about anything else, whatever else is happening in the room. He just wants his world record and his thing, and he's willing to do whatever it takes. And I think that's showing really hard, and that's why a lot of people are kind of aspiring to be that, because that's just a really cool persona that especially a lot of young people aspire to be, is like, I don't want to be the super popular guy. I don't want to be anything like that. I just want to be the one who's the best. Um, and that's kind of how he's branded himself. Yihang, I'm not going to comment too much on. And I guess probably spend the rest of this episode chatting about why. So when it came to 3x3 finals, I was absolutely gunning for Timon again to be 3x3 world champion. Again, because of seeing like how hard he's worked for it and everything like that. It was pretty obvious that Yihang and Shan Yi, I haven't said his name in this podcast because I forgot it before I started, and it's kind of embarrassing. But yeah, they were clearly the favorites to be winning for sure, podiuming, and despite that, I was still kind of hoping that Timon would clinch it, because I kind of have a little bit of a, I don't want to say issue, but I have my reservations on the healthiness of putting children in the spotlight like you get when you have an 11-year-old and a 8-year-old in a world championship final, and especially podiuming on a world championship stage. I know it happens in other sports as well. It's not just in speed cubing, but a lot of my job was around researching, participation in sports, how sports can affect the mental health of people at all different ages and stages in their journey. And I guess because of that, I'm kind of hyper attuned to a lot of the dangers. So I guess before we go any further, I definitely don't want anything that I say to be detracting from the success of the two Chinese kids that got first and second in world championships, because regardless of age, regardless of whatever, seeing those results, like multiple sub fours on the world championship stage, again, that's really showing that imperviousness to pressure and a psychological level of discipline that very few people possess. So if you can show up to the world championships and go and win the world championships, you absolutely deserve to have that trophy, have that success, have all of that is yours. And it's my issues, I guess, are not necessarily with the individual, and more just around what are the dangers of kids competing too young, and what kind of shows up. So I guess we'll chat a little bit about how kids learn to move, and how kids learn to compete, and how to make that healthy. And that could take a while, so probably be talking about this to the end of the episode. So yeah, where do we start? So when I was working with the National Circus School for the UK, one of the things I had to do was research learning and participation, and kind of look at what we could learn from sports and other art forms as to like what makes kids engage in things in a healthy way, and even what makes adults engage in things in a healthy way. But most of the research you find is done on kids and their development. the top guys for that were the ones in Canada. They had done a whole lot of research. Basically, when most countries, I think I've mentioned this on a podcast before, when most countries do research, they look at here's the top athletes, how do we make them better? And in Canada, they do it the other way around. They say, okay, let's take everybody, and if we can make everybody get really invested in sports and exercise, etc., then we will have a bigger pool of people to select from when it comes to taking people for, trials for elite squads and teams, national teams, etc. And what they found in Canada was, I think there's two kind of big ages where people drop out of sports. So the biggest one is kind of young teenage years, and that kind of makes sense. Your body's changing, your school and education stuff is changing, your social circles are changing, you start get interested in boyfriends or girlfriends, whatever, and you just kind of have a load more priorities than you used to have. So it's kind of understandable that a lot of people would want to drop out of sport and get into other things. But what was interesting about that is the ones who drop out of sport when they're teenagers almost always come back to it in some form or another later on. They might not become, elite athletes, but they're going to stay fit and healthy for hopefully the rest of their lives. The other big drop off was between like 5 and 7 years old. And what they found was anyone who drops out between 5 and 7 years old almost 100% never comes back to any kind of fitness. They just start to associate themselves as somebody who doesn't like being fit, doesn't like exercise, doesn't like movement. And that seems to be because around about 5 to 7 is the age where you start to realize that the other people in the room are having similar thoughts in their head to the thoughts that you're having in your head. And what that means is they can be having thoughts about you, and those thoughts might not be very good. So one of the top reasons that people exclude themselves from sport when they are that age is they get the idea, whether it's justifiable or not, that the other people around them think that they're not very good at whatever they're doing. And this is a really big problem because if you're a 5-year-old and you drop out of exercise, a year later when you and the other kids are 6 years old, the difference between a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old who hasn't done any exercise for a year and a 6-year-old who has done loads of exercise for a year is way bigger than it would be at 5 years old. Kids are developing so quickly that as soon as you start eliminating yourself from certain traits or skills, you're going to find the deficit becomes really, really big. So you have to really fight hard to be able to keep kids in sports and exercise at that level. And the important thing, it seems, is just that they just need to love moving around. They don't necessarily need to enjoy sports. They don't have to enjoy winning. They don't have to enjoy learning particularly. It's just like, here's a ball, do whatever you want with a ball. If you're as long as you're having fun with it, we don't really care what you do. And if you can just keep that type of learning going on, the kids seem to thrive really well. And one of the big things that people start to exclude themselves is because when you start putting rules, if you say, okay, this is football, this is how you pass a football, here's the correct technique, you have to hit it with the side of your foot. No, you didn't hit it, that wasn't the side of your foot, you got to get it more on the side, more with the heel, do it more like this, do it more like this. And then the message they get is, you don't know how to pass a football, so I just don't want to do it. Or you could say, oh no, actually there's rules, this is how we're going to... It's the best analogy. When I worked in gymnastics, We teach people how to do a handstand, and we'd say, okay, well, here's the handstand drills, and they're not fun to do, and they're not. You're not doing a handstand either. You're like putting your feet on a wall, and then you're just trying to hold yourself with your feet off the ground for as long as you can, and you can make that fun, but the problem is you're telling kids, oh, we're learning handstands now, and they're like, well, why can't I do a handstand? It's like, oh, you're not gonna do a handstand yet. That's gonna be in like 10 years. When you're 15, you'll be able to do a handstand for like a minute and a half. It's gonna be amazing. Or even a year from now, maybe you'll be able to kick up and hold it for a second or 2 seconds if you're lucky. And so the kid sees that and they're just like, I don't care. I You're talking about a year down the line. That's like 20% of my entire life. This doesn't interest me at all. When it comes to motivation, uh, we get most of our motivation from dopamine. Dopamine has like a 5 second window where it's useful or not. If you can't do something amazing in 5 seconds, then your brain, just as well as, doesn't really care about it. For a 5-year old, that's going to be amplified way more. So, and then when it comes to like competition and games, like did you win or did you lose, that's going to turn even more kids off. So the more we kind of make competition look like how it looks like for adults, the more very small children we're going to lose in the process. Now, between around 8 and 11 or 12, they're going to start wanting to learn skills. So they don't have to be functional skills. It's more like, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you tie your shoelaces? Can you climb to the top of that rope? They don't necessarily interested in how they're doing it. They're just interested in, can you actually achieve X? So when you teach in that way, again, that stops them from dropping out. This is one where, if you start thinking about this for speed cubing and stuff like that, you'll see that you can't necessarily always hit this in an ideal way, because speed cubing, the cube's solved or it's not. You don't necessarily get very many kids at any age that is going to be totally interested in cubing if their end goal isn't solving the cube. But in general, again, these are just benchmarks to think about, so we say, okay, well, if we're not pushing too hard in this direction, because we might force the kid out of it. If they're solving cubes and they're just like, yeah, I like doing it, and then we start saying, adding different challenges, okay, can you solve it one-handed would be a good example. You're not telling them how to do it, you're just saying, can you solve it one-handed, and they figure it out by themselves. And if they complete the challenge, whether they did it how you wanted them to or not, maybe they brace it and use a clamp or something like that, and I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but they do something that does not look like a speed cubing one-handed solve, but they only used one of their hands. So well done, you did it, congratulations. That works. Once you get from 12 to 15, that's kind of when they want to actually learn skills. So it's like, I want to learn the skill, I want to learn it the proper way. They actually become interested in learning in some form or another. Now, if you are a parent to a 15-year-old or something, you're like, my kid is absolutely not like that. I'll talk at the end, which is going to be kind of the crux of my argument anyway, that not all kids are going to be the same. Some are going to go through these stages faster than others, and some of them are going to be stuck. If you've hit a roadblock at an earlier stage, you're going to find it really hard to get into the next stage. So ideally, when we get to that kind of 12 to 15 stage, if we've done everything in a kind of nice and healthy way, they should be really on board with the idea of learning new things, and they want to know how to do it right, because they want to see themselves get better. Around about here is when you can also start throwing in the idea of self-improvement. So, that's when they get interested in actually seeing PBs, PRs, that kind of thing. And that's one of the best times when it comes to sport to start throwing in that and make it matter. You know, they might be used to the idea before that, especially in speed cubing. Everybody talks about PRs, whether you're 6 years old or 90. Um, but that's kind of the optimum time zone to be starting to hit that hard and start throwing it in. Then when we get up until like 18 to 21, or so 15 to 21, that's when you want to start. If they've gone through all those stages, achieved them nicely, that's when we start thinking about competitions. So that's like training for the exam, training for the test. You come in, you've got one chance to show everybody what you can do, and you got to do it under pressure, and hopefully not mess it up. 15 to 18, 21 is kind of like the prime zone for that to take shape. And the reason that's important is if you imagine somebody's missing one of those other stages, they haven't learned to just love the thing they're doing. Well, imagine what failure feels like when you don't actually enjoy the thing that you're failing at. Your immediate thought is to just want to quit. You want to get out. If you've built up your whole kind of identity around being a speed cuber, and suddenly, let's say you're the fastest in your school, and so everybody just thinks you're really fast, and you've never got to watch a YouTube video, and suddenly somebody says, hey, the world championships are coming up, and it's like, oh, I can't think of anyone else faster than me. And then you show up and you get humiliated, not by anyone else. They don't even care. They don't know who you are, but you were expecting that you're going to be in like the top 3 at least, and you're number 1,719. That's going to leave a mark. So it's important to get the love of moving, the love of, seeing what you're capable of, the love of refining what you're capable of, the love of putting yourself to the test, self-improvement, then the love of not self-improvement, of like social proof, being able to prove that you can do it when it matters. And then the final stage, which is into your adult life, so that could be any time from 18 onwards, is learning to compete against others. So especially in other sports where you have an actual opponent, that's where you have to go into the competition knowing that you've done everything that you can do, but actually it doesn't necessarily matter. You can have the best day of your life, and if somebody else just has a better day, somebody else just might be better than you, somebody else just might have done more preparation or more efficient preparation, or the cards just might have been stacked in their favor at that time. And again, this is something that you need to learn after you've got good at proving yourself. If you don't know that you are good at proving that you did everything that you can, then you're always going to be sitting there wondering when you've competed against an opponent, was that my fault? And what tends to happen for most sports and most kind of psychological issues that come with sports was, did I do all that I can? Was I just being lazy? When I burned out, like, the problem is just not having followed this little series of steps, and that's what kind of ruins it for people. Now, I mentioned already that people mature at different ages, different times. So it is very possible that a 7 or 8 year old might be not just on the kind of challenge phase where they just want to put their physical selves to the test and see, can I do X, can I do Y? They might be on the self-improvement phase. There's loads of different reasons why that could be possible. Maybe, I think it's unlikely, but it's not impossible that they've matured enough that they can even jump into the next stage and they're actually ready to, test to the exam, achieve things under pressure. I hope you can kind of see where I'm going here, is that when you take somebody and you skip through some of these steps because they're physically talented, it can leave the issue of, have you actually done everything psychologically and mentally for this person? And if you haven't, have you set them up to fail in the future? Now, I don't know anyone involved with Yiheng personally, so it's very hard for me to come out and say, hey, this is a bad thing that we've got somebody so young winning a championship. It's also not the first time, I don't think. I'm pretty sure Felix and Max and all of them were breaking records and winning things way before they were adults. But what I am saying is, it does make me kind of nervous. I always want to see how somebody's career pans out before I make an appropriate comment about it. But my big worry is just, when you've got somebody who's super young, he's like most famous person in the world, you start seeing all these memes like no flash and stuff have already come out. Is he gonna take that in like good stride? Is he gonna be like, okay, cool, yeah, they're making memes about me? If he's got a good enough team around him, and that's maybe one of the things where the coaching era and stuff can be really beneficial, is you might have people who can help through some of these things. Has it been explained to him kind of mentally how to focus and prepare? I think to some extent yes, because again, his ability to cope under pressure is so great. But on the other level, it's just like, all right, well, what happens when things come crashing down? What happens with the kind of success and fame type aspect of that? Is he going to be able to deal with that efficiently? That's kind of down to parents, coaches, whoever else. Like, I've heard China is now recognizing it as an official sport, so maybe that means loads more resources. Then outside of Yiheng specifically, what does it also mean for other kids, other parents, when you're seeing a kid do so well? Again, this isn't his problem or anything like that, but are we going to start seeing other parents start kind of trying to push their kids towards, oh, well, you should be trying harder, you should be working harder if you were more disciplined? This, you can't now say, oh, well, my kid's just too young, that's why he's not good enough. It looks like he could be good enough if he just worked hard enough. And I don't think it's particularly useful being world champion for a lot of people. Like, if you're capable of it, fine. But I've seen, in my kind of sports career, I've seen loads of people go to try and be the best, and I haven't seen very many people do it. And that's just how it is. If you're psychologically ready for that, then fine. And again, we're not talking about Yiheng here anymore. We're talking about just anyone who sees that success and goes, okay, cool, by the time I'm 15 I need to be world champion, because then it's too late. That's a problem for me. So hopefully it won't. Like Sebastian Weyer. Man, I should have looked up these names before I recorded this. Yeah, it was Sebastian, right? It wasn't Philip. Who got the 4x4. And he's, been doing it. What was it? He broke a world record in like 2013. So you do get to see the other side of things. But right now, all I've seen so far is everybody the hype of like the young kids. I think it's still cool that they can do that. I think it's cool that they've got the ability that they've got. And if they want to compete in world championships and they're allowed to, then why not? So congrats on the win and everything. But I think at the same time, we got to be careful and prepared when it comes for, you know, anyone who is world champion. You know, you've got to, that comes with its own psychological difficulties, so you've got to prepare yourself. And if you're a kid, you don't necessarily always have the tools to do that, so other people around you got to be stepping in and helping to prepare you for that. And for everybody else, also just to realize that it's not the be all and end all if you're not the best in the world when you are 11 years old. There is more to speed cubing, there's more to life. Again, the style and artistry aspect is really important for most people. It's worth remembering that you're probably never gonna be world champion, world record holder. The number of them versus the number of cubers there are in total is just so infinitesimally small. But there's loads of other cubers that we remember who haven't broken world records. So, you know, the YouTubers are a great example. More people know JPerm than most other cubers that there are. Don't think JPerm ever broke a world record, but again, I don't maybe pay enough attention to all these things all the time. And other people as well. You know, when you go to your cube meet, there's the certain people you see all the time. Maybe they're the competition organizer. Maybe they're just the one that has the specific plushie that they bring all the time. Like, whatever way people express themselves helps them integrate more with the community. And, you know, you can do big things and great things without needing to be the top. So, hope that wasn't too depressing. Hope it didn't feel like I was calling out anyone there. But yeah, thanks for watching. This attempt is over, and I'll see you in the next one.